Welcome back to the Searchmetrics Digital Summit. My name is Malte and I'm happy to announce the next presenter. Varsha Venkatesh will show us how to create content that actually leads to conversions. And Varsha is a data-driven storyteller with a background in writing and content marketing. And I'm really looking forward to hear from her. Varsha, over to you.
Thank you. Let me just share my screen and just make sure everybody can see it. If you can't see it, just let us know, I suppose. Okay, so I just want to start with one question. What is that one thing that you, me, and all of us here have in common? Doesn't matter where we're from, what we do, what we speak, or what we eat or don't eat. There is just one thing that we have in common. And for me, I think that's stories. If there is one thing every person on this planet can say that they have done, is that they have heard a story. And for us marketing people, we're always all about the stories. So welcome to the webinar today. I'm Varsha, and I'm a storyteller and a content marketer. I became a content marketer because I have always loved stories. But I've always wondered, what is it about stories that makes us believe that a tortoise can win against a rabbit? And also, what is it about stories that makes them so unforgettable? Do you recognize this quote? Well, to give you a hint, she wrote 7 unforgettable books. She sold more than 500 million copies worldwide. And this series had a lot of talking hats and paintings and friendly ghosts and flying broomsticks and all those things. I grew up reading Harry Potter. I still read them when I'm sad sometimes. There are people who love Harry Potter. There are people who like Harry Potter, and there are also people who don't really like it. But the point is that everybody knows the story and everybody knows about it. And years ago, when I first saw this ad, I was so fascinated that such a small sentence of just 5 words can paint such a strong picture, can tell you an entire story. 1,000 songs in your pocket. It's so simple. So stories can create magic. Stories create magic. And each company, each business's story is a new one and a different one. That is why so many products and services that, even though sell the same thing, are able to coexist in healthy competitions, because stories are told differently by different people. When you create your stories, you capture your users' attention. That is the power of a story. And that is the power of content. There is a reason we remember books, movies, ads, that landing page you saw, which immediately made you sign up for a webinar or a product or whatever it is, like immediately. They all told you a story. Storytelling is the heart of content. And even today, as the world has forced us to change our story, we are still experiencing how the way we do content and the way it is consumed can change in seconds. There's a lot of power in content. And even in these trying times, people who love stories want to hear more of them. And people who like telling stories are telling more of them. So here are just like some examples of brands that are adapting to the new way of life right now. And content is the vehicle. Content is what's helping them do that. So the first part of creating content for conversion is to find your story. To find that idea, that list of keywords that is sitting in your mind in multiple sheets, all over Post-it notes, all around the house, maybe that list of ideas that you created when you did a content audit on your competitor, or you were sitting and you were reading and you just had like this brainwave of ideas. So it all starts with that one idea that comes from all of these different things, like your keywords, your SEO research, your competitor analysis, and your industry market analysis. And then the second thing is knowing the objective of every piece of content that you write. The why, the what, the who. Why are you creating this piece of content? Could it be could this particular message be told in a better way as a blog, or should it be a landing page, or should it be maybe a webinar? Should it be a podcast? So why are you creating this piece of content? What is its purpose? And one of the most important things is, who is it speaking to? If today I was just sitting and maybe talking about coffee, maybe there are people who like coffee here, but that's not what you came for. So you came for the webinar. So I have to align myself to the who that I'm talking to. And the next is goals, knowing where you're going with your content. That is the purpose. What is the purpose of your content? What is the action that the reader has to take or the user needs to take? And of course, our good old CTA. And every line that you write in that piece of content has to be aligned with these objectives, and take the reader closer towards the goal. And with the content, the copy itself, the copy that goes here, the first and foremost thing is to always focus on the benefits. Sell later, way later. First start with benefits. The benefits is essentially the value props of your product or your service or your business. How is the user's life becoming easier, and why? Because of you. And the last is intrigue, which is creating curiosity. I have a question. Do you know why curiosity kills the cat? Because the cat looked. Else the cat would have spent all its 9 lives wondering, what was there? What should I have looked at? That might be a little bit of a dark joke, or even a joke that might not be too funny. I can't know if you're laughing or not, but I hope you did. But my point is, create curiosity. There is this one thing that I always follow, and it's etched in my brain, which is something that Dave Gerhardt said in one of his podcasts or in one of his LinkedIn posts. What is the intention of the first line of the copy? It is to make you read the second line of the copy. What is the intention of the second line of copy? To read the third, and so on. So creating curiosity with each line such that not even one line is invisible. I hope you're all still with me. I thought maybe we can just play a game. I hope nobody's asleep or gone away. So that is a blank store. This could be anything. So you can send in your answers in the chat box, or just think about it, or just write them. I'll just wait 10 to 15 seconds maybe. That is a blank store. This is a line that could have a lot of possible answers. It could be a hardware store, a medical store, a grocery store, a bicycle store. You could never know. Now let's try another one. That is a blank store where you can buy potatoes, onions, milk, eggs, and bread. Is this better? Is this making you come closer to an answer that makes sense? That is a grocery store where you can buy potatoes, onions, milk, eggs, and bread. So what changed between these two, the first and the second type of sentence? It was context. Context came in and told you what I was talking about so you could fill in the blanks better. So there's a power in context, and context comes from a lot of things. It comes from everything that you see, hear, watch, and analyze. I've just given a brief overview of the power of context. I could just talk about context for hours together. It's my favorite thing in the world. But you could start first by understanding what exactly your brand is. What is your messaging? Is it consistent? Are you making sure your messaging is consistent across every page, every channel? Are you making sure your messaging is adapting to the changes in the world, which is really important right now? And what are the channels that you're active on? What are the channels that you should be active on? And who are you talking to? Again, back to the point of answering the question of who is very important. Who you are talking to gives you one of the biggest contexts, depending on the industry you're in. Focusing on personas and then creating customer journeys for your websites and landing pages gives you kind of a visual representation of your user behavior. Once now that you've gotten someone on your website or your blog or your product page or whatever it is, what happens to them after that? Like, what happens to them after they fill a form or buy something or sign up or simply land on your page? Just think about it. It's very simple. You go to a lake, let's say you go fishing, you catch the fish. Now what do you do? What do you do with the fish? You could make a dish, you could freeze it, you could sell it. There's so many possibilities depending on who you are in the context of your life. So understanding the marketing and sales funnel, creating the marketing sales funnel tells you these exact next steps that you need. Once you've caught the people, once you've caught your readers, how do you nurture the people that you've caught? And the next one is to establish success metrics, which is essentially data. Data is key. Without the context that you get from data, there is no way we will know what is working and what isn't. There are so many questions that comes out of our data, and better yet, there are a lot of questions that get answered from data. It's kind of like my favorite type of context. One thing I want to highlight here is that when anybody talks about success metrics or goals or metric or numbers in general, the first thing that we think about is the conversion rate of your traffic to sign up, the conversion rate or the conversion number. But that is not the only data that you need to analyze. Okay, I'm just going to repeat that just in case someone is asleep or if your dog needed your attention. Your first goal, your primary goal or your goal of the traffic to sign up conversion number or conversion rate of any kind, that is not the only metric to look at. There is so much that you can do by understanding the traffic that lands on your page, just by the people that land on your page, particularly organic traffic. Because these are people who have found you. These are not people you have found, but they have found you because they came there because, they searched something with a word on Google and they found you. So organic keywords, again, as I mentioned in content, organic keywords comes to play here. The data of your traffic for a particular keyword, for specific campaigns, for specific regions, for specific languages, it can tell you so much about what your users are searching and how they're consuming your content. So watch them, those people and watch those metrics as well. Acknowledge them by creating, more educational content. Maybe people need more convincing to sign up or give you their email ID. Launch offers. Maybe they need more convincing. Keep them hooked by suggesting more reads. Maybe they need more convincing. So the power of content with context. There are so many things in life where we cannot think about the content and the context separately. There's one example that I want to give you. Just brace yourselves a little bit. If I ever start singing, is this the real life or is this just fantasy? There's two things that will come to your mind. There's two contexts and content that comes into your mind. One, nobody can ever say that they don't know the song. Doesn't matter where you're from, who you are, where you're sitting, what you're doing. When I sang this, you know exactly what song I'm talking about. You probably are singing along. Everybody knows who he is. And the second thing is that even though I love to sing, I probably really suck at it and I should not be doing that. So content and context is a powerful thing, but to be more serious about the examples here, going back to the first example that I gave you, show your users you understand them. This particular sentence, when he said 1,000 songs in your pocket, it showed that, it shows that the brand is understanding the users. What is our biggest problem? That we want a lot of songs and a lot of songs easily accessible. So show your users you understand them by broadening what you write about. Just your product and the first line of your value propositions, that's not good enough. You need to go beyond. Airbnb, for example, created a stir by leveraging user-generated content by, launching a lot of campaigns on Instagram. At one point in time, SEO didn't really even exist. And to quote a more recent example, who knew we could use chatbots to generate leads? Brands like Drift called it, conversational marketing, and now they've started a completely new category. So this is one of my favorite things about content marketing. It's as big as your imagination, and experiments are key. So just watching the data on your sign-up acquisition sort of a level conversion isn't enough. Data is everywhere, so because context is everywhere. This is a very old example. There was this series of Volkswagen ads that came out. I don't know if anybody has watched Mad Men. This was sort of during the same time, but there was the set of ads that Volkswagen came out with, which was just brilliant. They were pitted against Rolls-Royce, and at that point, Rolls-Royce was the aristocratic, luxurious, beautiful brand, leather seats and everything. I mean, who doesn't want to sit on it? And they used this context of Rolls-Royce itself. Rolls-Royce used the context of them being affluent and, luxurious, and Volkswagen being the complete opposite, which was sort of like, its affordability made it a poor man's car or a poor person's car. So they created that. So Rolls-Royce ended up creating that context for Volkswagen. Volkswagen took it and ran with it. They took that context that somebody else, that their competitor created for them, and they created their own story and their own context with that. And they said, well, ugly is only skin deep. Well, even though we're not that much to look at, and, after a while, even if you get used to it, it's still, it's kind of giving you the context of how durable it is and how much more that you get from Volkswagen that you don't from, let's say Rolls-Royce. They talk about legroom. That's one of our biggest problem. It's still our biggest problem, which is why we pay a lot of money when we, sometimes take a flight. There's enough headroom for people with a hat on it. They're also funny. So, and this one line that stood out for me was, the ugliness doesn't add a thing to the cost of the car. That's the beauty of it. Not only is the copy here so strong, but the way they've used something that was created as a context that is negative to them, there's something that was negative, they used that and made it beautiful. So this is one of the ads that I really, there's a whole bunch of series. If you're interested, I could share that later on. But it's a really, really cool series of ads. And even now, we're still using content and context. You don't see it, but though I hope that you do. When we started the whole Netflix party, because everyone is now sitting at home wondering what to do. We're supposed to sit at home now. Social distancing is a big thing. So brands everywhere are, using that not only to push selling or anything, or push their product or push a service, but they're actually using it to help control the situation right now. So content is everywhere, context is everywhere, and they all just really, really work together. I just want to leave with this note, which is write for resonance and not for reach. This is just one of these quotes that has just stayed with me because it essentially ties together everything that I'm saying, which is about creating content for conversion does not happen without context, does not happen without all kinds of context, does not happen without data. The amount of context that's there in all kinds of data that you have, that's how you create your context, and that's from there you even see new stories. There was this one example that comes to mind for me was in one of my previous jobs where I was working. We were producing a lot of content and we were doing a lot of keywords. We were writing for a lot of keywords, and suddenly some particular blog started ranking for one for a keyword that we didn't even realize could be a particular use case for our users. So there are so many tools, and there are so many things, so many campaigns that you're running, so that there's so much data that is coming out of all of these things that is left untouched or that is left unnoticed. So with the theme of this particular web summit about data, I just wanted to talk about how content exists with context. A content that exists with context is something that everybody is going to remember for the rest of their lives. So that's about it. And if there are any questions, please feel free to ask them. And I hope that I could answer all of them. And you can email me that thing that you see on the screen. You can tweet. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'll also be sharing a couple of stuff post this. I would love to answer your questions if there are any of them. And that's it. Thank you.
Great presentation. Can you end the screen share so that people see our cameras? Yes. So thanks for this very insightful, very entertaining presentation. I think it was the first time that somebody sang in a webinar. And for the record, your singing did not suck. Now, coming back to the actual webinar, I think my key takeaway here is to always keep context and consistency in mind, which I think is great advice for everyone. And I really love the Volkswagen example with their ad, like turning like an attack or something negative into something positive is amazing. And one other thing I especially liked is that you reminded us all that each piece of content is always part of some form of customer journey or user journey, which unfortunately is something that many people or so many companies forget when they create content. Now, I think we have two follow-up questions here.
One thing about the customer journey that you mentioned for me, which is interesting, is that there are two things companies do. Either they don't do it at all or they overthink it too much. But either way, they overthink it too much. They think it's like this big project. We need to understand everything about the customer, about every single type of customer. It's not that. It's just think about yourself as a customer. If you were to land on a particular page, what do you want to read, and write it like that? Just write it like how you talk to someone. So customer journey sounds very daunting and scary, but it's actually very simple. It's just a structure for your story.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Then coming to two questions that we have. Now I've imagined somebody has followed all of this advice, has watched this webinar a couple of times, has done everything you advise. What should I do if my copy still doesn't convert? Where should I start? How do I find out why it doesn't convert? Do you have any advice there?
Yeah, so this is why I structured my presentation in a way where I spoke about content first, and then I spoke about context. Sometimes when you write without the context, there's a chance your copy is not converting or your content is not converting. And the reason why I spoke about context is each business, each company's context is very, very different. Metrics that matter to me as a person who works in, largely in SaaS B2B companies, the metrics and the data that matter to me is very different from, let's say, an e-commerce company. It's very different from like someone in a retail industry or in a travel industry. So it's these metrics or these things that you write down for yourself or that you observe for yourself that tell you more about the context. That's how you know what you're missing. That's why I said context tells you helps you understand what is working and what isn't. Sometimes you feel like you're doing everything right, but you probably just missed out the who. Like you're probably not talking to the right person, or you're not probably talking to the right kind of audience. How do you know that? You understand that from, let's say, heat maps. You put a heat map on your website, and then you see, where are people going? Why are people not clicking on the thing that they're supposed to click on? There is a lot of context in the data that matters to you, and the only way you know that is by looking at all of the data that you're generating. Like if you have a pop-up tool, do you have pop-ups on your on your website, the pop-up tool itself can tell you so much more about, there's so much data in a pop-up tool that can tell you that the pop-up sometimes is working in certain pages and it's not in certain pages. Why? So there are so many questions that come from data, and there's so many questions that data answers. So that is the context that comes. And because that is different for different businesses, that's why I just wanted to focus on, look at all of your data, not just your conversion rates or your, click-through rates or all of those things that help make you feel like you acquired something. Doesn't matter. Just look at all of the data that you generate. Just don't leave any data unturned. And then
that makes sense.
And then you optimize the content, and not optimize without understanding what you're optimizing for. It's such an overused concept right now, optimization, that sometimes I feel like, okay, why are we optimizing it? Do we know what are we going to achieve? So it's hypothesizing that, if I make this change, or I learned X from this data and I want to make Y change on this, and I hope to achieve Z. So when you hypothesize that very clearly, you can see what is working and what isn't. So that gives you context.
Yeah, that's good advice. Thanks for elaborating. Second question. I can create content and creates a sense of anxiety, urgency, curiosity, but what really is the difference between these, and how do I create them? When do I create them? Why? Could you elaborate a bit more on that?
So anxiety, urgency, curiosity, these are the sort of three usual things that people use, us writers use, to try and, catch people. So for sense of anxiety, the first thing that comes into my mind right now is it's the whole toilet paper hoarding that has happened. Just everybody, it's the whole fear of missing out. The FOMO thing was misused so much that everybody just hoarded on everything, and then eventually realized that, okay, maybe we don't really need to actually hoard so much. This is so sense of anxiety is a very dicey thing to play with. It's if you don't learn these 7 steps right now, then your content is never going to get better. Or, if you don't do these 3 things, if you don't have these 3 tools in your marketing stack, you will never have 300% of growth. It's those things, a sense of anxiety, that doesn't focus on the benefits, but just tells you buy else you'll die. Sort of anxiety that doesn't work. I usually don't try to do that. I don't particularly always like it, but in some industries that does work, especially the e-commerce industry, it does work. But do it tactically. When it comes to urgency is pretty nice. It's offers. It's, for me, when you say sense of urgency, it's offers, it's discounts, it's time-based events, registering for, a webinar, for example. This definitely, helps in convincing. It's part of, I feel like this is a part of helping, or it's a part of nurturing the people that you capture. It's a way to tell people, pull people more, push them more closer to your product when done right. But for me, curiosity is what is the thing that covers everything. You can be anxious while being curious. You can be urgent while being curious. You can be excited while being curious. So for me, if your copy is creating enough curiosity, if your content is creating enough curiosity that the people are staying and reading the whole thing, they're not bouncing, they're not going away from your page, then you've got it. Then you've got the handle, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, those were all the questions we've had for now. If there are more questions, we can maybe do some kind of follow-up. Yeah, I would just want to thank you again for the really great presentation. And thanks everyone for listening in, and see all the viewers soon in the next video of the Searchmetrics Digital Summit, And I would say bye-bye from my cozy whole little home office here in Berlin.
Me too. Bye-bye from my cozy home in Berlin, and I hope you all are staying in your homes too.